They didn't forget a dentist appointment. They forgot their daughter's graduation. While I was walking across that stage, they were sipping wine in Santorini. No call? No message? Nothing. Hi, I'm Monroe. And if you've ever felt like your presence in your own family was optional, you're not alone. This isn't just a story about being left behind. It's about what happens when the forgotten one stops waiting to be remembered and builds something unforgettable. So tell me, have you ever been made to feel invisible by the people who should have seen you most clearly? Drop a comment. Share your story. I'm listening. Let me take you back to where it all began. They didn't forget the cruise. They just forgot me. The day I graduated with my MBA, my parents were somewhere in Santorini, smiling under a blue sky with drinks in their hands. The Columbia campus was bursting with laughter, flying caps, and group photos that would live on family walls forever. Mine didn't. There was no bouquet waiting, no hug, no whispered, "We're proud of you." Just the mechanical voice calling my name and the echo of my heels as I stepped onto the stage alone. I had emailed them the official invite 6 weeks in advance. It had the Columbia seal, gold lettering, RSVP instructions. I sent a follow-up 2 weeks later, then one more, just to be sure. No reply. But on Instagram, they'd been planning this stress detox cruise for months. After the ceremony, I walked out of the auditorium into the May sunshine. My classmates were wrapped in proud arms, posing with grandparents, siblings, parents. I stood at the edge of it all, clutching my diploma in one hand and my phone in the other. No missed calls, no texts, nothing but a new photo from Margot. A perfect shot of her toes in turquoise water, captioned, "Day 3, finally unplugged from all the noise." As I stepped aside to let another wave of parents squeeze in for photos, one of my classmates caught my arm. "Want a pic together?" she offered, already raising her phone. I smiled, gently shook my head. Not today. Behind me, I heard a whispered voice. "Her parents didn't show?" Another answered, "That's cold." I didn't turn around, just kept walking, each step like a silent signature on a contract I never agreed to. Outside the venue, still in my gown and heels, I passed a trash can. In one hand, I held the diploma. In the other, empty coffee cup, plastic wrap from a granola bar, and the weight of being forgotten. I tossed the trash, heard the soft thud. It sounded final. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone or scream into the wind like in a bad movie. I just stared at the screen for a long moment, thumb frozen above the like button. Then I pressed it. One hollow double tap. It felt like confirmation that they'd seen me and kept walking anyway. That night, I sat in my apartment, still in my gown, the zipper half undone. My roommate was out of town. There was no celebration. I placed the diploma on my small coffee table like it was an offering to nobody. The only email I got was from the university itself. "Thank you for attending commencement with your families." The bitterness didn't come in waves. It came quietly, like fog. It coated everything but never screamed. Around midnight, I opened my laptop and searched Zillow. I didn't know what I was looking for until I saw it. There it was. The house. 2 stories. White wood. Navy shutters. A wraparound porch with 2 swinging benches and that old bronze address plate that hadn't changed in years. Cape May Coastal Dream, listed for sale. My stomach tightened. I hadn't seen that house since I was 14. It was the one Margot used to call her forever place. She'd brought us there every summer for 5 years straight, always standing on the porch and whispering, "One day, this will be mine. Can't you just see me retired here, Monroe?" I could. I did. I used to dream of it too. Back then, I thought we were building something together. I zoomed in on the listing. High ceilings. Ocean view. Fully furnished. Price. Just high enough to be exclusive, just low enough to tempt buyers fast. Then a ping. A message from Aunt Sarah. Your cousin Parker got into Stanford. Celebration at our place tomorrow. Hope you can come. I stared at the text. Then came the follow-up. Margot says you've been so distant lately. Everything okay? I didn't reply. I just stared at the glow of the screen, then slowly typed 2 words. Not coming. I opened the drawer under my desk, pulled out the leather-bound folder with the name Hallie Events LLC stamped on it. That was mine. Not inherited. Not gifted. Built. Inside it was a collection of business permits, vendor contracts, tax documents. Proof of something real. Something I'd done while they were too busy posing for strangers. I opened a new folder on my desktop. Named it Closure Projects. Then saved a scan of my diploma inside. File name, graduation, absent.pdf. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was symbolic. Maybe it was spite. Or maybe it was just the first step towards something I hadn't admitted to myself yet. I got up to make tea. As I passed the mirror in the hallway, I caught my own reflection. Still in the gown, makeup smudged, hair falling loose. I looked like a woman who'd hosted her own milestone party and no one showed. Back at the laptop, I stared at the Zillow tab again. The house still there, unsold, waiting. 1,000 possibilities whispered through my mind. Revenge, regret, reclaiming. But none of them felt quite right. Then came clarity. Not rage, not grief, just decision. I whispered out loud, "You wanted this house, Mom? Good. So does Sylvia." And for the first time all day, I smiled. Funny how they forget the degree but remember to tag me in debt. The next time I saw my parents in person was at a family dinner in Connecticut, less than 2 weeks after graduation. Not to celebrate me, of course. Parker had gotten into Stanford, and Aunt Sarah was throwing a backyard gathering to mark the occasion. I only went because curiosity burned louder than pride. The moment I stepped through the door, I knew exactly where I stood. Somewhere between +1 and should've RSVP'd. The air was sweet with barbecue glaze, laughter crackling louder than the fire pit. Margot turned just long enough to say, "Oh good, you made it," before waving at someone else. Elliot offered a brief nod, already half-turned toward a cooler. I took a seat at the far end of the long outdoor table. Parker was glowing under a string of patio lights, surrounded by applause and stories. I listened as one uncle called him the first Ivy in the family, and no one corrected him. Not even Margot. Especially not Margot. She clinked her glass with Sarah's and said, "You've done an incredible job raising him. Such discipline. Such vision." I sipped my drink. No one had asked what I'd been up to. No one mentioned my MBA. I was invisible in real time, not just in pictures. That kind of omission doesn't scream. It erodes. "So, you're still doing that little event thing?" Margot finally asked as dessert plates were cleared. "That little event thing." "I graduated last month," I said, voice steady. "Magna cum laude, Columbia Business School." The table paused. Not dramatically, not even long enough to count, but just enough to notice. "Oh?" She blinked. "You should have told us. We'd have been there." "I sent you the invitation," I said. "Gold embossed, with RSVP instructions. You were on a yacht that week." Someone coughed. Someone else reached for a napkin. Parker looked down at his pie. Across the table, a little girl tugged her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Who's that lady?" The mother bent down, pretending not to hear. Margot laughed softly, the kind of sound that's supposed to sweep discomfort under the rug. "You know how our schedule's been. We've been stretched thin. Everything's been so chaotic." Elliot muttered something about jet lag and poor reception at sea. I reached into my bag and pulled out a stiff, cream-colored envelope. The same one I'd mailed, unopened, now printed again for effect. I placed it in the center of the table. Margot stared at it like it might be ticking. "This is what you missed," I said. "Not that you were looking." I stood, not angrily, not rushed. I simply rose the way people do when they realize their presence is nothing more than background noise. "You framed me out of your photos, so I framed this." I tapped the edge of the envelope. "Have you ever realized your family didn't just forget you? They deleted you? That kind of silence that rewrites the whole story without you in it. If that ever happened to you, leave a comment number 7 below. I want to know I'm not alone." Now, let's see what I did next. Behind me, someone muttered, "Damn." Others looked down, suddenly fascinated with their forks. One guest glanced up with a mix of pity and surprise, the kind of glance you give someone who just shifted the room. The walk to the front door was short, but each step stretched like film slow-rolling through an old projector. I passed the hallway wall where childhood photos once hung. My frame was gone. In its place, Parker, aged 6 through 17. Progress, pride, permanence, a timeline that had deleted me. The wind hit colder outside. I didn't look back. That night, I sat in my car, parked under a streetlight, humming like an anxious thought. The windows fogged slightly as the air outside cooled. My fingers hovered over the steering wheel. I could have driven home, could have cried, could have called someone. I did none of that. I opened Zillow again. The Cape May listing was still up, price unchanged. I clicked save this time, heart thudding as the image of the porch flickered on screen. I stared at it for a long time, not because I wasn't sure, because I was. This wasn't about revenge. This was about memory. If they wanted to forget me, I'd build a legacy somewhere they couldn't. Then I opened my inbox and typed a short message to Zoe Lynn, my corporate attorney and oldest friend from undergrad. Subject, title inquiry. Message, can you run a property title check on 2441 Atlantic Drive, Cape May? I need to know if it's still unencumbered, and if it's eligible for quiet acquisition. She replied in less than 20 minutes. Still clean. You want me to prep docs? My hand hovered over the keyboard. In my mind, I saw Parker blowing out candles while Margot held the lighter like a torch in her dynasty. I whispered to no one. You erased me for a legacy that isn't yours to control. Then I typed back, yes, quietly, and fast, and hit send. They thought it was destiny. I made it a transaction. 3 days after the dinner, I stood at the edge of a porch in Cape May, staring out at the Atlantic like it owed me answers. The air was salt-thick, still wrapped in spring's early chill. Beneath my feet, the white-painted floorboards creaked just slightly, old but solid. Familiar. I remembered that creak. I remembered this view. I remembered Margot whispering once, right here, 24 years ago. This will be our legacy. I'll host Christmas here. Our grandkids will run this porch. I was 10. I'd believed her. I'd smiled and said, I hope I get the room with the big window. I didn't say anything this time. I just stood still while a real estate agent's voice droned behind me. Original woodwork, a second-floor balcony, and all permits up to date. Owner's been keeping it off the market until the right buyer came along. Apparently, that buyer was me. The inside was even more surreal. Marble counters Margot once described in her dream kitchen Pinterest board, coffered ceilings she'd made me draw blueprints for during a holiday. Even the hallway wallpaper, blue and white toil, matched the sample I'd found her clutching in 2007, like it held her future. This is it, the agent said, cheerful. You want to go ahead with the offer? I turned away from the sunlit kitchen and nodded. Yes, full asking. But I want to add a few conditions. She raised an eyebrow, pen ready. No resale or transfer for 3 years minimum, and I want the deed transferred under a trust. Quietly. Trust name? I smiled. Hallie Events Legacy Holding. I signed the papers later that afternoon in a quiet office above a coffee shop 3 blocks from the shore. My attorney Zoe Lynn slid the final contract across the table. You sure about this? Have I ever sent you a doc I wasn't sure about? Number. But this one. She leaned back, studying me. It's personal. That doesn't make it less strategic. She gave a soft, approving hum. I'll start the title filing. You want a plaque installed? Not yet, I said. This house isn't finished. By sunset, I was standing alone in the living room, now legally mine. The keys were warm in my palm. I ran my fingers along the windowsill, then opened the lower cabinet in the kitchen and reached inside. Taped to the back wall was a small envelope. Inside, a note. My handwriting. Retirement dreams come with receipts. I had written it at 3 a.m. the night I got the financing pre-approved, the words pouring out before I could second-guess them. I'd printed 3 copies, one in my folder, one with Zoe, and one, here, for me to find. Or maybe for her. That night, back in my suite at the Ocean Crest Inn, I opened my laptop and created a digital folder labeled Final Steps. Inside, contracts, closing confirmations, interior photos, and one form labeled Gift Deed Transfer, Beneficiary, Sylvia Chen. I stared at that file for a long time. Sylvia had been my mom's rival since college. Brilliant, direct, unbothered by Margot's passive barbs. They'd both joined the same women's network at 30. By 35, Margot had sabotaged her inclusion in the fundraising committee with a whisper campaign about temperament, and yet, Sylvia never fought back. She just walked away, graceful, untouched. 10 years ago, I asked Sylvia over wine why she never clapped back. She had smiled and said, "Some people spend their lives trying to erase others. Me? I make sure I outlive their edits." Now I was making sure she did more than outlive. She'd inherit the dream house Margot thought was destined for her, and not through chance, through choice. The next morning, I met with the new caretaker I'd hired to stage the house. We walked through the hallways while I made quiet notes on what to keep and what to remove. The toil wallpaper would stay. The photos Margot had once said she'd hang would never be framed. As we reached the master bedroom, sunlight poured in through the large bay window, the one I'd once wanted for myself. "This room gets the best light," the caretaker said. I nodded. "It's always been the best." I placed a small envelope on the window ledge. It was addressed simply, S, Welcome Home, M. As we left, I turned to take one last look at the porch. Then I said to the caretaker, "Keys go to the recipient next week. No press, no noise, just delivery." She nodded. Understood. And just like that, I walked away from the house I had claimed, not for myself, but for the part of me that once believed in promises, and the part of me that no longer needed them. She walked into the dream Margot built, and sat at its head. The invitation arrived in an ivory envelope with silver trim. The calligraphy was unmistakably Sylvia's, clean, confident, like everything she did. No return address, no sender's name, just 5 words. Saturday at sunset, Cape May. Margot thought it was a charity gala. She mentioned it in passing to Elliot over brunch at the yacht club. Sylvia's trying to make a social comeback. Poor thing. Probably needs our presence to validate the room. She said it like Sylvia was a public service. I didn't laugh. I didn't say a word. I just marked the date in my calendar and watched it inch closer. It was an odd déjà vu, watching her step onto that porch again. This was the same spot where, 20 years ago, Margot once said, "When I retire, I want to hear grandkids running down these steps." Thanksgiving dinners in that dining room. Portraits over the mantel. She had placed her hand on the post and whispered, "This house is where the family line gets immortalized." Back then, I thought it was poetry. Now, I knew it was branding. When the day arrived, Margot and Elliot pulled into the gravel driveway of what they still referred to, at least in private, as our future place. She stepped out of the car in a flowing white linen dress, Elliot in a navy blazer. Their smiles were already in place. "This house looks smaller than I remembered," she said. I wasn't there to correct her, but I was watching. From the porch, Sylvia greeted guests with effortless grace. Her silver hair was swept into a bun, diamond studs at her ears. She wore pale green silk, soft as breath and deliberate as armor. "Welcome, welcome," she said. "Come in. The house is finally mine." Margot blinked. "Yours?" Sylvia smiled. "Yes. I closed last month. A generous benefactor made it possible." Inside, the house was glowing. Warm light poured over the oak floors, reflecting off champagne flutes and polished silver. Margot's breath caught the moment she stepped into the dining room. The tile wallpaper she'd once obsessed over wrapped the walls, perfectly preserved. "She copied me," Margot whispered. "Or maybe she just got there first," Elliot muttered. A guest leaned in beside her. "Margot, didn't you always say this was your dream house?" She laughed too loudly. "It's not the same. The finishes are all wrong." But they weren't. They were exactly as she once described. In the hallway, the space where she'd planned to hang her imported Italian oil painting now featured a serene watercolor of open ocean, clean, faceless, peaceful. I had chosen it myself. The evening unfolded like a silent performance. Sylvia introduced the guests. Philanthropists, editors, former board members Margot had once maneuvered around with precision. Now they were clinking glasses in Sylvia's kitchen. I stood behind a sliver of wall, invisible in my black shift dress, earpiece discreetly hidden beneath my hair. Margot passed by and whispered, "Sound check done." Lighting hits final cue at dessert. I nodded. Cue Sylvia's toast after plates are cleared, and dim foyer lights when she mentions legacy. He gave a soft, "Understood," and disappeared into the crowd. As dessert was served, Sylvia stood at the head of the long table. The room quieted in a wave, intentional, reverent. "I just want to thank you all for being here tonight," she said. "This house represents a new beginning for me, and I want to raise a glass to the woman who made it possible. She asked not to be named, but let's just say, her legacy lives in the walls." A pause. Heads turned, murmurs passed. One guest even gasped slightly. Margot's hand tightened around her flute. After the toast, she approached Sylvia near the fireplace. "You didn't tell us you were buying this place," Margot said, her voice carefully neutral. "I didn't think it was relevant," Sylvia replied. "You seemed preoccupied with yachts." "You don't deserve this house," Margot snapped low. "You don't even appreciate its history." Sylvia tilted her head. "No, I appreciate it very much. Because I know who tried to keep it away from me." Margot opened her mouth, closed it. Her face cracked just slightly around the corners of her composure. I watched all of it from the hallway's shadow, just behind the floral arrangements I'd ordered. Every element of this event bore my signature, unseen but irrefutable. Marco, standing by the soundboard, caught my eye and gave the faintest nod. Just as planned, in the main room, guests wandered. On one wall hung a single brass plaque, "For the woman who chose legacy over credit." "Thank you." Margot stared at it for a long time. By the time the valet brought their car around, her expression was blank. She didn't speak as Elliot opened the door, but as she got in, her eyes flicked upward, toward the second-floor window. The one she'd once claimed would be hers. Inside, the curtains fluttered. And I let them. The cameras turned. I stayed still, and that's what made them look. I hadn't planned to go. That's the truth. The gala wasn't my idea, and the tribute certainly wasn't my request. But when the press itinerary went live, and my name appeared, absent again, I knew I had to attend. It started with a call from Marco. Not my Marco, the restaurant one. This was Marco Whitmore, my publicist. He sounded cautious, like someone balancing on broken glass. "There's buzz about a legacy reveal at the Halden Gala," he said. "A few outlets have already confirmed Vivian's getting featured in Vogue. Are we doing damage control or silence?" Silence, I thought, is what let them edit me out in the first place. "I'm showing up," I said, "but not on their cue." The gala was held at the St. Celeste, a glass cathedral of luxury in Manhattan. Its entryway was lined with orchids and spotlights, and every wall gleamed like a polished version of someone's filtered memory. The night was branded as the future of Halden legacy. Irony had an RSVPD. Vivian arrived early, draped in white silk, her hair in a sleek knot. She looked like a swan carved out of snow, pure, strategic, bland. I watched from the upper mezzanine as photographers leaned in. "Vivian Chen, heir to Halden elegance," someone called out. And she turned, smiled, and said, "Just continuing a vision built with love." I nearly choked. I waited until the red carpet cooled, until the camera crews were packing up, and the big names had already moved to cocktail hour. Then I descended the main stairs in a navy gown that didn't glitter or cling. It was built to hold its shape, not shimmer for attention. That night, I wasn't aiming for flash. I was building a shadow sharp enough to cut. My heels echoed across the marble. One reporter glanced up. Then two. Then flashbulbs. I didn't pose. I didn't turn. I just walked. Deliberate, direct. At the entry desk, the girl in black checked the guest list. Her brow furrowed. "I don't see your—" "Try under Halden Events," I said. She typed, then paused. "Oh, yes. Executive tier." I smiled. "That's correct." Inside, the room pulsed with polished conversation. Waiters in black moved like choreography. Margot stood near the central display, where a floral tower spiraled upward in hues of crimson and bone white. Vivian stood beside her, framed in light. I noticed the positioning, Margot to the left, Vivian just slightly ahead. I moved through the crowd without a ripple, until I passed the stage technician and said, "Check the final cue." "There's an edit." He blinked. "Sorry?" "Segment 4. Change in visuals. Halden Events logo only. No initials." He checked his tablet. His eyes widened. "Got it." Vivian's speech was scheduled just before the donor tribute. She walked on stage to polite applause. Her voice carried well. Years of elocution and charm school paid off. She spoke about vision, about grace, about how mentorship builds legacy. She never said my name. Of course not. But she used my words, the ones I wrote 2 years ago for an internal summit. The ones Margot told me were too earnest to scale. I felt the burn low in my ribs, steady and surgical. As the applause ended, a sponsor reel played behind her. I saw photos flash, Margot at the launch of Halden Cares, Vivian shaking hands with charity partners, Elliot in a tuxedoed freeze frame. My frame never appeared. But the music, the music, that was mine. It was the score I licensed for Halden's 10th anniversary. They hadn't changed it. They'd just renamed the file. A quiet fury rose in my chest, but I didn't leave, because they needed to feel me stay. Have you ever stayed in a room? Not to be seen, but so they'd feel your silence? That quiet strength that says, "I'm still here," louder than any speech ever could. If you've ever chosen to stay instead of storming out, drop a comment number 9 below. What happens next changes everything. After the formal program, Guests floated toward the atrium for dessert and statements. Margot smiled like a queen emeritus, Vivian beside her, like a duchess in waiting. I drifted near a group of fashion editors and let my presence ripple. One leaned over, whispering, "Isn't that Monroe Halden?" I thought she stepped back. I heard she was phased out. Another murmured. Their words weren't cruel, just curious, the kind that sting because they're real. I turned slowly, offered a quiet smile, and said, "Oh, I haven't gone anywhere. I've just been building what they now try to copy." Then I walked away before they could form a reply. Later that evening, in the press suite, I overheard Vivian say, "It's all about tone. Legacy has to feel soft." Margot replied, "And silent when needed." I stepped in. "Funny," I said. "Silence isn't legacy, it's erasure, until someone makes noise." They turned. Both smiled, tense, choreographed. Vivian cleared her throat. "We weren't expecting—" "You never are," I said. "That's why I always arrive on time." That night, I didn't give a speech. I didn't pose for photos. I just made sure my name appeared on the final donor thank you banner, projected across 60 feet of crystal glass, flanked by the phrase, "Founded, directed, produced by Halden Events." The crowd looked up, read it, paused. Margot's smile faltered. Vivian's eyes dropped. And I just stood still. Because sometimes you don't reclaim space by shouting. You reclaim it by not moving. So they have to shift around you. They tried to cut me out of the frame. I bought the whole gallery. The envelope came on a Tuesday. No wax seal, no monogram. Just thick linen paper and my full name, scrawled in handwriting I hadn't seen in months. Inside, a short note, unsigned. It read, "You've made your point. We regret how this was handled." No apology, just that corporate "we," the passive shield of power cloaked in civility. I didn't react right away. I placed the note on my desk beside a mug of cold tea and returned to reviewing vendor contracts for a spring launch in Tuscany. 3 days later, it showed up online, a gossip blog, small but sharp. The headline read, "Estranged Heiress Crashes Gala, Reclaims Power in Quietest Mic Drop of the Season." No names, but the source was clearly planted. Someone close, someone bitter. Vivian released a photo the next morning, herself in an all-white suit, captioned, "Rebuilding with Elegance." I almost admired the spin. But the truth had already slipped loose, and it moved faster than their edits could follow. By Friday, I received 3 different emails from journalists requesting comment. One subject line simply said, "Are you the woman behind the house?" I didn't reply, because by then Sylvia had already published her own piece, a short essay in a small business journal titled, "The Cost of Legacy Isn't Always Financial." It ended with a dedication. "To the woman who gave me more than a house, she gave me the end of someone else's script." I printed it, framed it, hung it above my desk. That same week, I received an unexpected call from Elliot. I let it ring. Twice. On the 3rd try, I answered. "I just wanted to say, that house. It meant something to her," he said. His voice was tired. Lighter. Maybe emptied. "I know," I said. "Why give it to Sylvia?" I smiled. Because she never asked for it. She just survived being denied it. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "She reads the deed out loud when people visit. Like she wants it engraved in memory." "Good," I said. "Let it stay there." Later that month, Margot sent a gift, an antique vase she once told me I wasn't refined enough to appreciate. No card, just bubble wrap and silence. I placed it on a shelf, then moved it to the back closet. I wasn't angry. I just didn't need symbols of pretend peace. In May, I spoke on a panel for women in power, not because I wanted revenge, but because the invitation used my real title. Founder, creative director, Halden Events. Someone in the audience asked if legacy should be earned or inherited. I smiled and said, earned. And protected. Especially from those who assume they own you just because they raised you. The room went quiet. Then someone clapped. Then another. By summer, Vivian had faded from the Halden Foundation's main website. A quiet transition. No announcement. Just a changing of names on a footer. The family didn't break. They shrank. I didn't feel triumphant. Just clean. And in that stillness, something opened. I bought a smaller space in Chicago. White walls, sunlit windows, a blank canvas. Not for events, for memory. It's called Halden Frame, a private gallery where I archive every project, every proof, every photo they once tried to crop me out of. It's open to the public 4 days a week. Entry is free. The day before it opened, I walked through the quiet rooms with Marco. He carried the last box, press copies, old invoices, unused invitations from events I was once erased from. I asked him to hang one near the exit. The rejected gala invite, red-penned with a scribbled note from Margot that read, "Remove Monroe. Doesn't fit press image." We framed it in glass. "It's bold," Marco said. "It's honest," I replied. On opening day, the space filled slowly. Former interns, small-time bloggers, 2 former clients who'd never gotten a thank you call after the transition. They wandered quietly, asked nothing, took everything in. At the front hangs one piece, my Columbia graduation photo. No edits, no filters, just me, smiling, alone, framed by choice. Underneath it, a brass plaque reads, "You can erase someone from the photo, but not from the foundation." A little girl pointed at it and whispered to her mother, "She looks proud." I didn't interrupt, because sometimes the truest form of visibility isn't declaring you exist. It's being so undeniable, they regret ever thinking you didn't. I no longer stand at the edge of my own story. I don't need permission to exist, nor validation to be seen. After everything, I've reclaimed peace in silence, power in memory, and dignity in the name they once tried to erase. People may try to blur you out in the eyes of others, but no one can dim the light of someone brave enough to stand up for the truth. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's simply refusing to disappear. And eventually, those who thought they didn't need you will realize they were never standing on solid ground without you. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between staying silent to be loved or speaking up to be fully yourself? If this story touched something in you, share your experience in the comments. I read every word. And who knows, maybe the next story will be yours.